When you're in presence time, you're therefore not rehearsed, and obviously when you're not rehearsed, you're by definition going to experience more failure. And then you also, being in present time, are going to have the delight to realize that the failure was not that big of a deal and you learned a lot. And you get to see also, when you're beginning this concept of beginning what's right in front of you with whatever's right in front of you, it's like calling you to not be in your head and not to be in your thoughts about what's happening or what you're going to do next or what just happened, but just see what your life contains right now. And you're going to respond differently from your state of presence. And the information that you get is, like, I love also that you said, you will see the inevitable progress. You will notice you are not doing the same things over when you're paying attention to your life in real time. It's the time when you have the opportunities to say, oh, I'm about to do that thing again. That's my pattern or my addiction that I wish to change. And then you have a chance that you could maybe do it differently or change it. And you also, even if you didn't manage to not do it this time, you'll start to have a different process and different feelings. It won't be as comfortable to do the things that you don't want to be doing when you're taking your life as it's coming. You're like, oh, wow, I'm doing that thing again, is really different from doing it without, noticing that you're doing it. I mean, it says bundles. I mean, if we could live our lives like that, it would just be a lot. The peace factor would go up. The kind factor would go up. It's a lot harder to be rude when you're paying attention to what you're doing and saying in real time. The concept of the other thing that you often say that sounds like that is about opening your eyes and your ears and looking at your life going forward, just opening your senses to the moment that you're in. And that's the opposite of the unconscious behavior. We're bumping into things around us. We're paying so little attention to real time.
Yeah, and one of the things that came up for me while you were talking is, for myself, in the past, what I was doing was I would bump up against my limitation, or what I thought was my limitation, and then I would tell a story about it. I would say, well, when I was a kid, blah, 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 or my dad always did this, or, my mom always did that, or this is just the way I am, and, blah, blah, blah. I had a bunch of reasons because, part of it was defensiveness, certainly, to defend my meager ego. But part of it was just I didn't understand that I was actually responsible for my own behavior. I thought that was a concept, like, yes, I'm responsible for my own behavior, but I didn't understand I was literally responsible for all of my actions. And some of them I can do a pretty good job with, and some others I don't even know what I'm doing. And so in those moments when I was talking about failure, I'm not talking about failure that terminates your existence. I'm talking about going, ugh, I'm not handling this very well. What can I do? I could just stay present and notice that I would like to be different or feel differently than I do right now, and quit blaming somebody else or the situation or my childhood or somebody else's childhood on the upset.
Yeah, the failure thing is big, because a failure just means that you didn't know what you were going to do or say in a situation, and you feel failure and you feel dumb because you stumbled. That's a way to go forward, learning that it's okay to be that vulnerable. And while you could spend a lot of your life just trying not to fail that much, always knowing what was going to happen and what you were going to say and how you respond to this and that, and having a personality that's very, very rehearsed, and it's painful. It turns out it's a lot less painful to fail forward in that way than it is to maintain a sense that you have to put on that what's happening, and that you've covered every contingency, and you're already prepared for that situation. It's uncomfortable. It's very limited. How many things in the entire world, of all the possibilities of things that happen, and especially the things that haven't happened yet, the good things that you want to come, how many of those things could you possibly have, even if you worked all of the time to try and to figure things out about, you'd only hit a very small amount of them. So you'd be trying to put a very small limit into how big your world could get. if you were trying to only be in situations that you knew how to handle. It's like just so much more fun, and there's so many more possibilities just to take it as it comes, and you're not even responsible to respond nearly as much of the time as you think you are. That's a liberation in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a lot more looking and listening than you have to be asserting and telling, and it wouldn't necessarily be less fun if you were the person who was quiet more, and then when you said something, everybody went like, wow, because you were just waiting for something really useful to say about the situation, or just you were able to put a perspective on that people felt compelled to be drawn to because it was more elevated and loving and high-minded, and it was interesting it appealed to the heart in a certain kind of a way. You wouldn't necessarily lose any points for your ego at all being the person who wants to talk all the time, say the most, say it loudest, say it quickest at all. You might like it.
Yeah, and well put. And also the thing that I wanted to mention that just occurred to me also is that marriage and relationship is really an excellent container for forward failure, because the bond that you have with your partner, if it's a loving bond and a trusting bond, which is what we're trying to do, is open our hearts to each other, to soften, to allow the other person and ourselves to be who we are, then really what we're doing is, when the other person is failing, rather than create a narrative about it, which is like, well, you're only doing this because such and such, we're telling a story about or characterizing it is a word that I like to use. Characterizing means I'm impugning your character because you just failed. Instead of that, what I see us cultivating, not just with each other but with our daughter, is the practice of trying to not narrate somebody else's failure and let them to find the moment when they want to take responsibility for it, instead of chasing them around demanding that they do that.